Hey everybody, and welcome back to video number 7 in my 10-part series, how to set up your first saltwater marine aquarium. And this episode will be a little bit long. We're going to talk about live rock and live sand, and it is not an easy conversation. Let me tell you that. There are many strong opinions, so let me just try to give you the background. Go ahead and like this video if you like it, subscribe. I'm building a website to kind of house all my YouTube videos in a better format, and also show some links to some great articles that I like, and also a section on my my livestock as well. So that's just www.thereeftankblog.wordpress.com, and I'll go ahead and put a link below. So go ahead and click on that if you're interested. I think it's going to be pretty cool. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about live rock. So let's define it. It's rock. It's either pulled like directly from the ocean or from dead coral skeletons, and then it's populated with beneficial bacteria to aid in the nitrogen cycle, which we'll cover in the next video. So basically, live rock is there to help in the nitrogen cycle to convert ammonia into nitrates, basically deadly things to fish into things that aren't as harmful to fish. So we need to talk about a couple different terms. There's like wet live rock and dry live rock. And there's no, every website will label them differently, and it's very confusing to understand what exactly is going on. So, wet live rock. That's pulled directly from the ocean and shipped, usually wrapped in some sort of wet towel, directly to you. So this is literally pulled from the ocean, they try to keep it wet, and they ship it to you. Now, there's both pros and cons with this. Pros, it is going to be highly colonized with beneficial bacteria and other organisms to help you seed your tank and your sand bed. So it will be ready, after you cycle it, which we'll talk about, and it will have all those bacteria in it that are pulled directly from the ocean. So it'll be really good in cycling your tank. It'll be really good in converting that ammonia into nitrate. It'll also come with some coralline algae, most likely, and that's that pretty different colors, a lot of purples, greens, blues, that a lot of reefers go for and try to cultivate over time. But there are some cons with going with wet live rock. First of all, you can destroy reefs. I mean, we have no idea. Well, with some kinds we do, but a lot of times we don't know where they're pulling it from, and they may be destroying reefs in the process, which for most of us would be awful because we're in this hobby because we absolutely love that. A lot of times this wet live rock contains pest organisms, things that you do not want in your tank, whether it's different kinds of worms or Ipstasia or who knows what else. So you got to be careful to inspect it and remove the things that you don't want. And the thing about live rock, wet live rock, is there's going to be a lot of die-off that happens due to shipping. And there's going to be a long curing process. You're talking about weeks to months. So just know it's going to. You should not just get it and put it in your tank right away. You really should cure it. Okay, now we're going to talk about dry live rock. Okay, so we just talked about wet. Dry live rock, generally speaking, they use old coral skeletons, either pulled from the ocean or underground, and then they're laid out in the sun. They're acid washed, and basically everything on them is allowed to die. All right. So the pros of this is it's clean of pests, it's clean of algae. You're not going to get any bad worms, stuff like that. There are several types that are ecologically friendly, which is great. It's cheaper because shipping is going to be cheaper due to there's not any water weight in it, and it doesn't have to be shipped to you quickly to maintain all that bacteria. The cons, you still should cure it. There's still going to be phosphates and things in there, dead matter that you want to slough off, and so you definitely want to cure it for several weeks. Dry live rock can still be pulled from live reefs. It can be pulled from live reefs and then acid washed and cured, so it can still be destroying. So if you really want to be conscious of the environment, you should probably get some sort of reef saver rock, and I'll talk about different kinds of rock here in a little bit. Cons, another con is that there's going to be no beneficial bacteria or organisms present. Some people think that's good, some people think that's bad. So just know that. The term, though, drive live rock is really a misnomer because there is no live bacteria present. The only way to really get live bacteria present is to get wet live rock that preserves some of the bacteria. Now, the point about drive live rock is you are going to be the one to populate it. All right, whether that is through beneficial bacteria, through different starters, through a slow cycling process, but you're going to be the one to do that. There's different types of live rock. If you just go online to a different website, there's reef saver. Basically, reef saver rock is rock that is not pulled from a live reef. So you can rest assured that it is not affecting the reefs in a negative way. There are pros and cons with buying reef saver rock. Marcos rock, really reputable. I believe they're based down in Florida. Check out their rock, really nice. Marcos, Marcos rock. There's Pucani rock. BRS sells a lot of Pucani rock. Fiji rock. These are just different kinds taken from different places. So if you check them out, Pucani rock, Fiji rock, obviously Fiji rock, you know where that's from. Tonga branch rock. It's shaped differently. Shelf rock, that is, like a shelf, so you can put stuff on it pretty easily. Aquacultured, right? So where they take the rock and they actually culture it. They soak it in salt water and they populate it with beneficial bacteria and coralline algae. And then there's a thing called Project Reef Rock, which is pretty new. It can either come in a purple color so that it looks like it has coralline algae on it. It's also a kind of reef saver rock. Okay, when we come back, we are going to talk about curing. All right, everybody, welcome back. Let's talk about curing. Curing is kind of confusing, and there's a lot of different takes on it. But let me just tell you what it is, and then tell you the basic steps. All right, now these basic steps, people do them a little bit differently, and I'm going to give you the way that I've done, and a way that will work. And whether or not it's the best way, that's totally up for debate. So curing rock is also known as cycling the rock. All right, they're basically the same thing, so you don't need to worry. Now, running a cycle on your tank is different. So we're talking about something very specific, curing, cycling a rock. And what it is, it's the process of submerging rock in warm, aerated salt water for several weeks, several months sometimes, and allowing any and all dead organic matter to release from the rock and populate with beneficial bacteria to aid in the nitrogen cycle. Basically, you are trying to get anything dead off of the rock and allowing it time to populate with beneficial bacteria, or at least take everything off. A lot of times, if you're curing the rock, like you can see in my video here, is where I keep my salt water. It's just a little 20-gallon. It's probably not going to be, you're not going to be adding any beneficial bacteria. That will be done when you add it to the tank and then you cycle your tank. What you're really trying to do is get rid of all the dead organic matter, because what's going to happen if you leave that dead organic matter, even if you get live air rock shipped directly from Fiji, a lot of it's going to die off. And if you put that directly into your tank, that dead matter is going to overwhelm the system, and it's going to cause severe ammonia spikes, nitrate spikes, and it's going to possibly kill anything and everything you have in your system. It's going to smell awful too. It's going to smell like rotten eggs. So, I bought my rock. I bought Reef Saver rock. It's probably not the best rock out there in terms of how much water it can hold and how much beneficial bacteria it can hold, but it's good for the environment and it stacks really well. So I went ahead and chose that. It does come dry, and I did cycle it for a month. Now, during that month, I didn't see really any spikes in ammonia, but I did see a lot of stuff fall off, so I'm glad I did it just to be on the safe side. You should cure all rock, whether it's dry rock or wet rock. It's just a really good practice. You can also purchase already cured rock from your local fish store. Just make sure it's a reputable fish store, and ask them how long it's been curing for, so on and so forth. So here are the steps. Okay, step number 1. It is really important to cycle all non-cured, non-cycled live rock, either wet or dry. Right. Number 2. Here we go. So step A, buy a dark trash can. Okay, these Brute trash cans are staples in the hobby. This is a small 20-gallon. They are reef safe and no light gets into them. All right, B, fill it with RODI water, add reef salt, heat to around 78 degrees, and add a power head to circulate the water. So if you look into my tank, okay, this is for my salt water. I always have a heater in there, and I have a power head. All right, and I'm always circulating it. I'm always heating it for my salt water, just because I want to always have a backup in case something happens. But this is the same thing I'm going to do if I am cycling live rock as well. I'm going to bring the salt up to where I want it, 35 parts per million, somewhere around there, and then add a heater and circulation. You want the water circulate to get rid of all that dead matter. All right, step C, step 3, place rock inside and cover it. All right, pretty simple. Now you wait, but there's a lot you do during this process, okay? So you want to perform weekly ammonia phosphate nitrate tests. So what you're going to see is once it starts to cure, things are going to die. You're going to notice the smell, right? And your ammonia is going to spike. This is good. This is what you want, okay? This is the beginning of the curing process, okay? So if it does smell too bad, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing water changes, okay? So changing a significant amount of the water. You can also add a bag of activated carbon in there. That's going to help clean up the smell for sure. All right. Not everyone's going to have a smell. Not everyone's going to see huge spikes. It just depends on how clean your rock is. If you buy live rock, it's definitely going to have a lot of die off. All right. Step D. The rock is only finished curing after you've seen that spike in ammonia and nitrites and nitrates, and after it has gone back down to very close to 0. All right. The water should smell clean and fresh. All right. That's basically how you're going to know it's done. This will likely take weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, depending. All right, when I come back, we're going to talk a little bit about aquascaping and then jump right into sand beds. All right, let's talk briefly about aquascaping. You can see on here I've been using, this is Reef Saver rock from Bulk Reef Supply. It came very, very white colored, and it's slowly turning some purples and some greens. Some coralline algae rode in on one of my snails, and since I've added corals, there's been some coralline algae on there. So it's slowly bettering. I don't want to talk about aquascaping too much, except just give you some basics about it, some things to consider before you start purchasing your rock. Okay, aquascaping tools. All right, basically mine is just stacked. All right, you can stack them up. Different rocks stack differently. I stacked mine. I pushed it down and stacked it directly on the glass. Some people don't do that. They stack it on the sand. That's fine. But just know it's going to be less stable, especially if you get something like pistol shrimp, which I have, and it has completely dug out little caves. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Underneath this rock, all right, and over here you can see the little cave hole as well. You can see them moving around a little bit. If that was stacked on the sand, it could have collapsed on me. Okay, so stacking is definitely an option. That's all I have done. There's epoxy. Epoxy is 2-part basically, right? And if you've ever used epoxy before, it has 2 separate parts. You combine them together into a putty, you massage them together, and then once they cure, they're set like cement. A lot of people use epoxy. You make sure you use a reef-safe epoxy to keep some pieces together, and you got to use it generously. And there's different colors of it, but that's definitely going to be another way to make sure that your rocks stay together. There's also super glue. All right, some people use a combination of super glue. You just get a really thick reef glue, basically. It's just a thick super glue, especially used for attaching frags in your tank. But super glue is one of those things you can also use. For stacking, again, I just think you should stack on glass personally. Stack on the very, very bottom. If you're not going to do that, just make sure you don't get any sort of sand sifting or burrowing creatures that could possibly collapse. Even snails, a lot of snails, like Sarah's snails, could possibly collapse your rock work. So just be careful with that. Also know that if you have things balancing, like if you can see this rock right over here, this is balancing on top. It's pretty secure, but if you get a large snail or a sea urchin, it can knock those things over and it can kill and damage and also just be a huge pain in the butt. You can also use drills, chisels, and acrylic tube, right? So different kind of rocks you can chisel more easily. With this Reef Saver rock, it does have a tendency to split. I did chisel some of these pieces into shapes I wanted and had some success. I definitely bought more than I thought I needed to. But you can drill holes, and if you want to attach pieces on top of each other, that's a really good thing. You can drill a hole through two pieces, get a piece of acrylic tubing, and attach them together. That's a really good way to secure it. If you want to create a cave effect in a big piece of rock, you can get a chisel and a hammer and slowly chisel and hammer away at it to create that look. Okay, when we come back, we are going to dive into sand beds, and I know everyone can't wait, so we have a lot to talk about in sand beds. Alright, as we're talking about sand beds, you can see my new orange spotted prawn goby right over here. He paired up with a pistol shrimp for a brief moment yesterday, and then I think the pistol shrimp scared him away. I heard a loud snapping sound, which is probably the pistol shrimp. So I'm hoping they will pair back up again, because it's really kind of adorable to see them together. One of the coolest things you can have in a reef tank. Okay, so here's a close-up, alright? So sand beds. The thing you need to know is you need to know your goal, okay? That's going to determine the grain size, the type of sand, and the depth of your sand bed, okay? Because you hear so many horror stories, and it's because I think people don't understand that different types of sand, different depths, have different ramifications for what kind of livestock you can have. So it's really, really important. So let's talk about that. Okay, so first of all, live sand, the term. It can be pulled directly from the ocean, which is then shipped to you, okay? Or live sand can be pulled from the ocean, it can be cleaned, it can be sterilized first, and then beneficial bacteria is added back into it. To kind of see both of these, check out two brands, Carib Sea and Ocean Direct. Okay, pretty much any sand you're gonna buy from those is gonna be safe for your aquarium, right? Types of sand. Check out a link on my website for tons of info. Remember, it's www.thereeftankblog.wordpress.com. I'm going to briefly talk about it. Okay, you're going to hear things like oolite, aragonite, and crushed coral. Okay, oolite is limestone. It's a kind of calcium carbonate, really. And generally, the grain size is 0.25, which is considered sugar fine. It's really, really fine, up to 2 millimeters, which are some larger pieces, kind of like you'll see in my tank. There's aragonite, which is just calcium carbonate, various grain sizes. All right, and then there's crushed coral. Unless you have very specific reasons for using it, don't use it. It's just large pieces of coral. It's going to collect tons of detritus, tons of dead matter, and you're going to have to be constantly cleaning it. Okay, grain sizes. Basically, read the label. Okay, sugar fine is going to be like 0.2 millimeters to 1.2 millimeters. The thing about it is, if it's too fine and you have a strong power head, you're going to create some sort of sandstorms in there. Okay, so just be aware of that. You know, sugar fine sand can blow around your tank. Yeah, oolite sand usually up to 2 millimeters. Crushed corals anything above 3.5 millimeters, and then mixed grade, which is what I have here. I don't know if you can see, but the thicker particles eventually stick to the top, and all the finer particles fall down below. I have a mix of sugar fine up to probably 1 millimeter. I'm happy with it, although I do like the look of sugar fine sand. I'd probably go for that in the creature. But here's what you need to consider with grain sizes. 1, burrowing creatures. Okay, if you're going to get a pistol shrimp, if you're going to get sand sifting, if you're going to get any sort of burrowing creature, you know, you need to have a small enough grain size that they can create a burrow. Okay, and then the second thing is nitrate detritus buildup. Something that is a thicker grain will allow more poop and more food to fall down through it. Okay, something of a finer grain is not going to allow that as much. So just keep that in consideration when you're looking at what to purchase. Okay, here we go. Deep sand bed versus shallow sand bed. And I've talked about this in a previous video, but I'm going to talk about it again here. Okay, first of all, there is the no sand option. All right, easy cleanup in a no sand option. All right, you can keep the detritus moving in your tank, so super easy. It has a very minimalist look. Some people really like that. Like I said, no detritus buildup. You can't have any burrowing creatures. You can't have sand-sifting gobies. You can't have sand-sifting sea stars, okay? You can't have certain kinds of shrimp in there because they require a sand bed. So just know that going forward that you're not going to be able to have those unless you get like, you know, a little tub and put a section. But then that kind of defeats the whole purpose of having that look. And there's also going to be no beneficial bacteria that populate your sand bed, right? Because one of the good things about a sand bed is it does populate with beneficial bacteria. Okay. Now, deep sand bed. So we're going to talk about a deep sand bed being about 5 to 6 inches at a minimum. Okay. This one here is about a 2-inch sand bed. It is definitely a shallow sand bed. Okay. There are very, very strong opinions on deep sand beds, and I'm not going to side one way or the other to say that lots of people have had success with deep sand beds, shallow sand beds, and no sand beds. But the thing about a deep sand bed or a shallow sand bed is you have to know what kind of livestock you can put in, because deep sand beds operate very, very differently than a shallow sand bed. All right. So in a deep sand bed, they only work using a small grain size. A deep sand bed, basically what it tries to do is it tries to create an anaerobic, meaning no oxygen area at the very, very bottom. And if you have thick grain sizes, oxygen will penetrate. So you have to get a small grain size sand. Okay, there really is no proven science behind this. Okay, so it really is anecdotal evidence. A deep sand bed, people worry, can become a detritus and phosphate trap. All right, they just think that, over time the food's going to settle, it's going to decay, and it's just going to sit there, and eventually it's going to destroy your tank. That can happen. All right, that can certainly happen. So you need to learn how a deep sand bed works and populate it with the beneficial bacteria, the beneficial worms, things like that are going to help stir it up and consume those things. In a deep sand bed, you really don't want burrowing creatures, because the point of a deep sand bed is you are going to populate it with worms and things that are going to keep the bacteria consumed. And if you get a sand-sifting creature or a burrowing creature, what's going to happen is it's going to eat up all those worms, eat up all those beneficial organisms, and then it's just going to become a detritus trap. Okay, so if you want a deep sand bed, be really, really careful about burrowing animals. Yeah, and then it needs the anaerobic area to succeed, so you have to make sure it's 5 to 6 inches at least, and then you don't want to disturb it. Okay, that's kind of the trick. A shallow sand bed, all right, usually 1 to 3 inches, somewhere around there. It's what you need for burrowing animals, sand-sifting animals, but you need to keep it clean though, through sand-sifting creatures, maybe having good water movement to keep the detritus moving, and then you can also vacuum a shallow sand bed, which can be helpful. To figure out exactly how much sand you need, use a sand bed calculator. Literally just go online and type in deep sand bed calculator or sand bed calculator, and they can kind of tell you based on the grain size how many pounds of sand you're going to need for the size of your tank. Lastly, there's another substrate called Miracle Mud. Well, 2 more things: Miracle Mud and then Bioballs. Miracle Mud I'm not going to talk about a lot. You don't put Miracle Mud, generally speaking, in a display tank. It's something that will go in refugium, and the idea behind Miracle Mud is it can be a safe breeding place for your copepods, your amphipods. It can also is said to release beneficial minerals into the water. So I'm not going to talk about that. I don't use it. A lot of people do, so you can check out their videos. And then there's the last thing is like biofiltration media, like bioballs and marine pure ceramic plates. Basically, the point of live rock, the point of live sand is to have great biological filtration, to cycle your tank, right? But you don't need to have those things. You can use bioballs. Basically, all they are these little usually blue, plastic balls, and they create a lot of surface area for beneficial bacteria to colonize. Same thing with marine pure ceramic biomedia plates. just really, really dense, lots of pores in there to allow all those ammodifying, denitrifying, nitrifying bacteria to populate. Thank you guys. That's a very, very long video. Hope it was useful for you. Our next video, video 8, we're going to talk about the nitrogen cycle, RO/DI water, salt water, and test kit. So a lot of good stuff. Again, go ahead and check out my website, www.thereeftankblog.wordpress.com. And any comments you have, any questions, let me know. Take care, everybody.